People ask me what I do, and the reality is, from my perspective, I have the best job on the world, or actually, I have the best job off the world. That over the years, as I've been involved with the different projects and programs that I've had access to, um, I've been able to do some amazing things, and I've been extraordinarily lucky, and I fully recognize that. But I've been down to the Antarctic. I've been inside active volcanoes with robots. I've had been able to work on projects where they made Hollywood movies about the projects. I've been able to send things that I've worked on directly to other planets several times over. My signature is sitting on the surface of Mars in 4 different places. I've been able to fly on NASA's zero gravity aircraft and experience weightlessness. And so, having those opportunities is something that really has been, number one, an enormous privilege, but also a heck of a lot of fun as I've gone through my career.
I think it's well known that the zero gravity aircraft is also known as the Vomit Comet. Do I dare ask the question? Did you?
I will put it this way: it has that nickname for a reason, and everybody helps that airplane earn its title. It's part of the deal. Now, having said that, there are things that you learn and you adapt to pretty quickly, and when you fly on the airplane, it's an incredible experience, because just for 30 seconds at a time, you get a little tiny taste of what the astronauts actually feel on orbit in terms of experiencing weightlessness. And it's really quite an eye-opening experience in terms of understanding just how much sensory information we have and utilize every single moment of our lives is gravity dependent. And when you take that away and you get to feel for the first time what happens to your inner ear and your stomach and everything else when you take gravity away, it's pretty amazing.
What is your current title?
Is Program Executive for Solar System Exploration, working in the Planetary Systems Division of the Science Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. I need a business card that's about that long to do that one. For me, it was really very, very easy. In the era that I grew up, and in particular, like in my neighborhood as I was a kid, you wanted to be one of 3 things if you were my age: either a baseball player, a fireman, or an astronaut. Those were like the 3 career choices. And other kids on the block already had baseball player and fireman covered. So I wanted to be an astronaut. Quite simply, from the time I was 6 years old, that's what I wanted to do. And again, back then, the only way you could be an astronaut was you had to be a military test pilot first. And I got as far as high school and found out that my eyes are so bad that the military was never going to let me fly. And so I sat there for a minute, sort of being crushed, as I realized if I couldn't be a pilot, I couldn't be an astronaut. So that wasn't going to happen. But then I thought to myself, well, if I can't go myself, I want to work on machines that can be my proxies and go for me, and I can explore through their eyes. And that was how the interest in computer science and robotics started, and basically sort of shifted my focus a little bit and said, still want to do space exploration, still want to be involved with all that, but I'm going to go a different route to get there. And then pursued that very, very actively, and really learning the depths of computer science and robotics. Undergraduate school was a computer science degree, grad school, artificial intelligence and robotics research. And then because of that, quite honestly, got very lucky and was able to get a job right out of undergrad school working at NASA headquarters as a contractor. And it was simple as, when I had the opportunity to interview with a company that had a contract at NASA headquarters, it was pretty much my whole interview was, how much do I have to pay you to be able to work there? Just sort of recognize the opportunity that this was at least at the place that I wanted to be, and I was willing to take pretty much any job to just get my foot in the door and then work my way around to what I really wanted to do. And that's exactly what happened. Came in, started working with computer system support as a contractor at first, and then slowly worked my way around as I learned the organization and where the different activities were going on, was able to start working my way over to becoming involved with the robotics research and technology development program, which eventually I ended up running for about 12 years. And then did a transition from the research and technology activities into actual flight projects in the mid 90s, when through the robotics research program, we developed the Sojourner rover, which is the very first rover to ever be sent to Mars. And that also was my first full up planetary flight project as well. But with the success of Sojourner, made the transition out of the research community and into the actual flight projects community, and have been working on flight projects to explore the planets, mostly Mars, ever since then.
NASA is a huge dream for so many young people, and reaching for the stars. I almost feel like it is the NBA of science. But I'm curious to know if you have any colleagues or have worked with colleagues that did not have advanced degrees. Did they ever have so many skills and talents that they got in because they were, for whatever reason?
One of the things about NASA, well, number one, it is actually quite large, and there's NASA itself as sort of the central organization, where working for the agency, you are a federal government civil servant employee of NASA. And there's about, I think the current count is about 18,000 people who work directly for the agency. But realistically, the community is much larger than that, because if you include all of the contractors that work with us, it's probably closer to 100,000
Wow.
that are directly involved in the civilian space exploration effort, organized and centered around the NASA activities. And of course, now we also have, in addition to that, in parallel, other private commercial enterprises that are working into that realm as well. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and all the other ones that are there as well. And so the potential community is very, very large. And across that, as you can imagine, for something that big, virtually every single discipline you can imagine is represented somewhere. Yes, there's a lot of scientists and engineers, physical sciences, basics of engineering of every flavor that you could imagine. Of course, we have all of those. But we also have journalists, we have nutritionists who work with the crews to figure out what the meal plans for space should be. We have journalists and reporters who work with our public affairs office to figure out how do we get the word out to the public about what we're doing. We have writers of every flavor that you can possibly imagine, working not just on technical documentation, but all sorts of different aspects of sort of telling the NASA story, and documenting what we do. We have lawyers, because part of what we do has obviously got to deal with the legal and lawful implications of what we do, and putting together all the appropriate materials associated with that. But it goes well beyond that. It goes to virtually everything. There are musicians that we work with and artists that we work with. As I said, there's journalists, there's accountants, there's writers, there's civil engineers, not just structural, mechanical, or space engineers, but civil engineers, people who've got to build and operate and maintain the facilities that we have all around the country. So all these different disciplines are out there. And so the breadth of your interest can be very, very widely distributed in terms of what we're looking for. But also, we're always on the lookout for truly brilliant people and who are the best at what they do. And very frequently, we may find that someone who's been pursuing their education, maybe not in the traditional manner and going through and getting an advanced degree in physics or something like that, but instead has been partway through their undergraduate science or engineering program, and all of a sudden has something that was so valuable to contribute that they maybe never finished their degree but still came to work with us, and yet are very actively involved in some of the research programs. And I know personally of several examples, even within the programs that I ran, where that was the case. So yeah, we certainly are interested in folks, and the traditional, most frequently seen mechanism is someone who's been through a 4-year degree program in physics or astronomy or something like that, and then maybe on to grad school, in particular if you're an astronomer. That, yes, we do see that most frequently, but that's not the only way that it happens. There's lots of other pathways too.
When you say you have musicians that work at NASA, are they working on projects using their music skills, or are they musicians in addition to being scientists?
So we've actually had musicians involved with our projects over the years in several different capacities. In some cases, NASA has actually gone out and actively sought artists of all flavors to develop works of art specifically directed or centered around a space theme as a specific work of art. In other cases, we've had people who are, maybe they're engineers in their day job and centered about what they're doing with NASA, but they're also musicians on the side, and then they'll bring that talent into the lab as well upon occasion. And so we get both. I think the thing that I didn't appreciate nearly as much before I started on my career as I do now, many years into it, is just how central to everything we do as professionals um, is centered on, focused around really, really good communication. The ability to communicate your ideas clearly, to get a point across, whether it's with a spoken word or in writing, is so critically important to everything you're going to want to do. And if you are not able to capture your thoughts and your logic, your rationale for an argument or for a point that you want to make, or the passion behind why you think something is right, if you can't capture that properly, either in the spoken word or in writing, you're going to have a difficult time getting other people to think in parallel with you and agree with you and follow the lead that you probably want to set in terms of getting a technical decision made on an engineering project, or getting something um, advocated for as a new project that you want to start, or making a pointed argument in terms of trying to convince somebody of a technical detail on a certain design, or anything else. That the communication, in particular written communication, is so fundamentally important. And so when I talk to students who are going and starting their academic career in college, and think about what engineering courses they want to take, the thing that I always tell them is, while you're taking your engineering courses, take writing courses too. Make sure you really know how to write, and write well, because that's going to be as important, and in some cases more important, than your engineering skills and knowledge.
Teachers and parents are constantly talking about soft skills, and we see people communicate all the time. And I think there's sometimes the belief that it doesn't matter because there is so much bad writing that we come across within social media or even newspapers. But we can't stress enough that practicing and writing as much as you can is really going to keep honing those skills. It's not something that you flip a switch. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of persistence, and hearing the feedback that is not always positive, but young people need to learn from that feedback and keep improving that. So that is something that is really important to hear from a NASA scientist, that science is one thing, but communication is really going to be the key as they move along in their careers.
You never, ever, ever stop learning. That you're not finished with college. You get your degree and then you never crack another textbook again, but rather you will always be learning new stuff. And there are times I know that in high school and in college and in grad school, there are certainly periods where I was kind of going, I'm so tired of the classroom. I just, I want to be done. I want to be out doing other things. But it's really interesting because there's this transition point that happens somewhere in your life after college, or after school, where all of a sudden you go, I really need to go back and take another class again. I want to go back and take another class again. That was learning was fun. I enjoyed the learning process because I got to think about new things and discover things that I hadn't ever considered before. And there's an innate enjoyment just of that part of the process that really does grab you. And it comes for different people at different times, but you'll find that also is going to be so centrally important to what you're doing with your career, and it doesn't stop.
Did you have any mentors as you were going through your career, and how did you discover them? Did you go up to somebody and say, I've got questions, or did someone offer to help you? Tell me a little bit about that.
I did have a couple of different mentors at different points in my careers, and I think for most people it is a case where you may have someone that you are working with or is mentoring and helping you for a while, and then that there's a transition at somebody else's. It very rarely is it one continuous person all the way through, but I very definitely had. In many cases, it was my boss or his boss that may have been sort of taking me under their wing a little bit, and sort of helping guide some ideas. And I also recognize that mentorship takes on a lot of different forms. In some cases, it was almost a highly structured, formalized program of someone that I was working with who on a regular basis would sort of sit down and help me think through things. And in other cases, it was as simple as just a coworker who was more experienced that I could sit and talk through things at lunch and just sort of kick around some different ideas or issues that were coming up, or have a chance to sort of be a sounding board for different thoughts I was having on things. And it can be formal or informal, long-standing or very, very short. In some cases, I may have had somebody who will help me mentor through a single project for 1 month, and then we had an entirely different relationship after that. But that 1 month of mentorship was highly critical in terms of what I wanted to do. And so as I say, it was different forms, different types, but the most important part of it that I had was being willing to accept that mentorship came about in different ways and be open to it when it does happen, because being able to draw on and learn from the experiences of others is a much more efficient way, as one of my mentors would say, so much more efficient way of learning mistakes than making them yourself. And that's worth its weight in gold in a lot of cases. Mentorship can also take place in an inverse way, that you can learn from people not just by looking and watching and observing and learning and what they do right, but rather, hey, I'm watching this person. They may be perhaps unwittingly mentoring me in what not to do. Watch other people make mistakes, learn from that and say, aha, okay, I know that the right thing to do is think about what would that person do, and then do the opposite. And that, although it seems a little bit strange, it's sort of a negative version of mentoring. It does happen too. And again, it's sort of learning from others' mistakes, but you're learning and you're using that experience and getting out of it what you can.
I think that's something that we all have to learn the hard way, is that when we're working with other people, that we have to know when not to talk. And I think that can be a really hard thing, especially when someone is doing something maybe not the right way, but it is not necessarily your place to do that. But I think there are still ways to get that through there, but we all have to learn to be, to share our viewpoints carefully. And maybe that's just another tip that I need to tell people about, is know when to not say anything.
One of the sort of cliches you hear frequently about in a professional workplace is respect for people who know how to tell truth to power, and that's considered to be a very laudable characteristic. Um, a reality is usually you get to the point of knowing when you can do that and how to do that because you've done the other. You've told truth to power. The corollary of it is a person in power has to be willing to hear the truth. You learn about how to do that because you usually did it to someone who is not willing to hear the truth and had to suffer the repercussions. Those sort of things happen as well. And again, you draw from that knowledge and experience to use in the future as best you can. But yeah, you usually learn by doing something the wrong way or telling something to the wrong person and then realizing what that consequence is.
I'm still learning that on a daily basis, when to keep my mouth shut. But that comes with age, I guess. I don't know.
What's the saying that wisdom comes from experience, experience comes from bad decisions?
Oh, I like that. I'll have to write that one down and put it on my computer.
The project I'm working on right now is probably about 1,000 people all together on the project, and they're scattered all over the country. We don't co-locate everyone, just as our standard way of doing business. A lot of our meetings and science team meetings and operations reviews and things like that were done remotely anyway. So this is sort of what we do as a standard course of business, just because the projects are so large. We have our weekly tag up meetings that I'm on the East Coast, the people I work with are all on the West Coast. This is how we do stuff anyway. And so this is right now with our students is a great way to introduce them to that a couple of years ahead of when they might normally run into that sort of an experience and get them used to it early. So it's what we're hoping is the experience the students are going to get this year is going to be different. No question about that. But in terms of having them get some insights into what the engineering profession and the science professions are really like in terms of practical day-to-day experience, I think they're going to get, again, certainly different, but just as valuable an exposure as they would normally. We build a spacecraft out at the Jet Propulsion Lab in California, and it's got to fit inside the nose cone and the adapter ring of a rocket that's built in Colorado and shipped off to launch at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And all those big pieces all come together for the first time down in Florida. And if somebody hasn't followed an interface specification properly, there are big problems. Fortunately, they all do, but that's a skill that is learned.